Hello and good morning, everyone. This is a live stream, and we're going to be talking about pay for performance. I know a lot of you are just about to jump in live, so I'm going to talk a little bit about sort of why I believe in P4P so much. But before I get started, a lot of times I know when you join a webinar or some sort of live stream, like, are they going to sell me something? Are they going to sell me something at the end? And let me be very upfront and honest. Yes, I'm going to try to sell you on something at the end of this webinar. It's going to be something that changed my business. I've poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into developing and continuing to do so because I believe in it massively. It changed my business, changed my relationship with my business. It changed my relationship with my employees. And I truly believe that it is going to replace what is currently known as the dollar per hour system. And I feel like the people that jump on the bandwagon now will be the ones that get the talent out of a very, very difficult labor economy. I'm very, very passionate about P4P, pay for performance. And so when I say that I'm going to sell you on something at the end of this webinar, I have absolutely no guilt in saying that because I believe in the product 110%. It's changed my business, and I believe it'll change your business as well. So let's go ahead and jump in. I'm going to go ahead and go through a bit of a slide deck and talking about P4P, pay for performance, and then I'll open it up to questions at the end and just answer as many as I possibly can. Any questions that you might have, I can absolutely go through those. So let's go through the slide deck first, though, and then I'll jump into questions after that. Let me just go ahead and pull this up. Boom. All right. So P4P, let's go ahead and get started. The premise of P4P, pay for performance, is that unmanaged labor is the root cause of unprofitability in just about every home service business. Whether you are installing fences, doing maid service and janitorial, lawn care, landscaping, pool services, whatever home improvement business that you're in that uses labor as what we are selling, because the products that we are selling to the customer is the labor of our employees. And the whole arbitrage of generating profit is I hire someone at one rate and I am able to sell that labor at a higher rate to the customer. And hopefully that delta covers your overhead. And so the premise here, though, is that your overhead and the waste that is caused by unmanaged labor, i.e. you not being able to keep eyes on your employees at all times of the day, is what creates unprofitability in your small business. Now, some people try to get around P4P by implementing other ways to manage their employees. It's called micromanagement. It's called putting cameras in all of your trucks. It's called recording, putting audio devices inside of all of your trucks. It is showing up. This just boggles my mind. It makes me so mad when owners say this. They just roll up on employees occasionally at job sites. Like, I hate that. Like, can you not trust them? Because if you can't, what you're saying is that you have an unmanaged labor problem. You do not manage your labor correctly. And in my opinion, what allows a small business to grow and go beyond just one or two employees is having a system that manages the laborers instead of your eyeballs, literally seeing the employees all day long. The reason you can be so efficient and profitable at one or two employees, I talk about this all the time, why people retreat back to this, is because once you get above two employees and you have 2 trucks, 3 trucks, 4 trucks, 5 employees, 6 employees, etc. When you start getting that direction, what happens is you cannot keep eyes on them all day long. You cannot be managing them via micromanagement. You cannot be watching every single move they take while they're on the crew with you. Now, when you are small, 1, 2 employees, you can do that. And you don't need P4P during that time simply because you are the system by which you are managing the labor. But as you grow, you cannot do that. And so you're either going to go one of two directions. You're either I guess you could do 3 options. The first option is really bad, and that is just let laborers run loose. They just do whatever they want. They're super inefficient. They stop at every gas station. They take naps. They show up to work late. All this other garbage that happens that makes businesses unprofitable and usually causes the owner to retreat back to being solo or 1 or 2 employees. That's the first option. Second option would be that you micromanage them, that you essentially record them, you track them, you make them send screenshots of where they're at every single time they get into the truck, that you maniacally watch a map of all their trucks moving throughout the day. And if they stop, you literally call them. That's micromanagement. The third option is P4P. P4P is where you allow the system of compensation that you create in your business to manage unmanaged labor when you can't see them. When they're unmanaged, you allow the system to manage them, and you allow the compensation to dictate how much money they make based upon how hard they work. All right. So the whole premise of P4P is that I believe unmanaged labor leads to waste. And I cannot afford the overhead of having multiple management and people doing quality control and people watching maps of trucks, driving around all day. I can't afford that in my small business. And so therefore, I'm going to have a system that manages the labor, right? I truly believe that paying dollars per hour will become antiquated. The reason for that is because as more and more companies adopt P4P, what's going to happen is the highest performers, the laborers in every industry that are the highest performers, are going to want to work for the companies that have P4P because they know they can make more money because they work hard. And the companies that do not institute P4P will be the ones that attract everyone that wants dollars per hour because they know they have a guaranteed income regardless of how hard they work, regardless of whether or not they're scrolling TikTok for 3 out of the 8 hours that they are clocked in, and regardless of whether or not they actually push themselves and work hard throughout the day, they will make a certain amount of money. That is who will be attracted to non-P4P companies down the road. As the labor market gets tighter and tighter, and the reason I believe so much in P4P and I'm pumping a lot of money into it, like originally P4P was only going to be for Gusta Lawn Care. As I begin to realize how powerful it was, I knew we had to build the software. And in order to do so, we've been pumping hundreds of thousands of dollars into it. And the roadmap at which we are wanting to execute on is going to require a lot more money. So we were not going to be able to afford that with just Augusta Lawn Care. It would have been impossible. We don't charge the franchisees for the software, and it was impossible. So we opened up to the public to literally fund the software I know is required in order to run a very successful and profitable home improvement business. And I truly believe dollars per hour will become antiquated. The same way that when you look at like something like car sales, everyone just knows that you're not going to get $1 per hour wage as a car salesman. You're going to get some sort of compensation and commission based salary. You're going to get some sort of commission, some sort of bonus structure based on how many you sell and how well you perform. And that's going to trickle down into the labor market because that's the only way you'll be able to be competitive with the likes of Amazon, FedEx, UPS, Costco, and all these massive companies that can afford. Trust me, you look at their quarterly reports, they can afford to pay people more money. You just had Apple pay their top developers $200,000 in cash bonuses, and then you expect companies like P4P software to be able to compete with developers. It's extremely expensive, and that's going to happen in the labor market. As we've seen in the past 10 to 15 years, a massive shortage of developers. Now we're just starting to see the same thing happen in the labor market because we're going from a very high tech, very hard, sophisticated, something that no one knows how to do, technology and developing coding. And now we're going to labor, something that no one wants to do anymore. No one wants to work outside. No one wants to work out in the heat. No one wants to work out in the cold. So guess what's going to happen? We're going to have to get creative with the way that we compensate, or else we're going to become the way of the dodo bird. Like we're going to lose businesses. The reason I'm so passionate about this is because people who do not institute P4P in the next 10 years will go out of business. And I truly believe that. And we will not be able to, it's not going to be because of your competitor down the street. It's not going to be because of the other landscaper. It's not going to be because of the other janitorial service. It's going to be because of Amazon and these massive conglomerates, Walmart moving in that can afford $20, $25 per hour of their frontline staff. And when there's a labor shortage, they just move up their dollars per hour because they can afford it. Because they have massive amounts, billions of dollars that you're competing against. So stop thinking you're competing against every other landscaper, every other home improvement contractor, every other janitorial service for laborers. You're not. You're competing against Fortune 500 companies. And this is why I've talked about, when you look at the jobs reports over the past several months, the massive amount of jobs gains that everyone's bragging about right now politically is going to massive companies. It is not going to small businesses. Small businesses are in aggregate massively lower than when we first started COVID. And all of those jobs, that lower unemployment rate that everyone's bragging about has shifted. All those jobs have gone to massive companies. So that's who you're competing against. And the only way to stay competitive with them is using P4P in my mind. And that is going to allow those highest performers to make more money. I truly believe that dollars per hour not only is bad for your employees because they cannot make more money if they're high performers using the hourly system. It might literally take them 6 months to get a raise. Or maybe your starting pay is at $15 an hour. It might take them a year or two to get to $20 per hour. That's not fair if they're kicking butt from day one and they're producing at the level that they should be being paid $20 or $22 per hour from day one because they're high performers. And you're going to probably they're going to leave. Like, man, churn is so high. No, you didn't have a system in place to pay them and compensate them adequately fast enough. And so, yes, they went and got another job that they could instantly make that $20 per hour. I truly believe that dollars per hour, though, is also bad for you as the owner because it chains you to the business and limits your best employees. It chains you to the business because you are required to manage the employees. You have to make sure they get out of the shop in the morning instead of dilly-dallying for 20 or 30 minutes and drinking coffee and talking about whatever they did on the weekend. You have to make sure, you have to manage them and make sure that they're not sleeping and stopping at gas stations. And why did you guys stop 5 times a day between jobs? A job is 1 mile away from another between stops. Why it take you 35 minutes? Oh, well, we had to just make sure we put the notes in the job. Like, that frustration is what constantly chains people to their businesses, because you constantly are living in this stress of, are my employees working right now? I'd never have that now that I'm on P4P if I see them on their phone. If I see an employee on their phone, I really don't care, because either A, they're looking at their job notes and that's fantastic and they need to do that for their job, or secondarily, they're browsing whatever and that's fine. It's up to them. If they want to work hard, they'll make more money. If they want to scroll on their phone, they'll make less money. It's up to them. The system is now governing how much money they make, instead of me constantly breathing down their throat of what they should be doing and micromanaging. They hate it. High performers hate when you're breathing down their neck, telling them what they should be doing and watching them on a map and recording them and rolling up on them a job to see if they're working hard. That is extremely demotivating to your frontline highest performers. And it limits what they can make. Your highest performers literally can show up day one and be more profitable for your business. The people that have worked for your business for 5 and 10 years, but there's somehow the person working for you for 5 or 10 years is making more money simply because they get $1 bonus every single year per hour. Like, that is so ludicrous. The fact that someone that might be hungry, 20, 21-year-old, but willing to work their brains out and learn and go home and watch YouTube videos on how to do the job better, and they're somehow making less simply because they haven't worked with you as long. That's not fair. It's going to demotivate your highest performers by having the $1 per hour system. It's going to take them a long time to get up to where they should be making. And furthermore, you're going to end up paying people not because of how much they produce for the business, not because of how much profit they earn for the company, but simply because they asked for a raise. They are going through a family trouble. They had some unforeseen medical bills. And I'm not to say that those things don't happen or to seem like I don't care about those things, but the fact of the matter is not just or fair or equitable that employees get paid more and get raises based upon those things. It should be strictly a meritocracy by which the harder you work, the more efficient you are, and the better you are at your job, you make more money, period. And it doesn't matter how long you've been with the company, whether or not you go hunting with the boss on the weekend, or whether or not you bought them a gift for their last birthday and therefore they gave you a bonus. That is not fair. And it's going to limit and just demotivate your highest performing employees. Your lowest performing employees are always thrilled with $1 per hour. The people that are always going to give you trouble when you transition to dollars to P4P is going to be your lower performers. It's not going to be your high performers that are hungry and wanting to make more money and willing to work hard, because they know they pull 90% of the workload out in the field. All right, some people are like, hey, I want to switch to P4P, but what about legally and what are some of the accounting ramifications? Is it really legal to give someone this type of pay in the labor market? So from a legal standpoint, obviously you talk to an accountant, you should talk to an attorney, all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, what we do when we are advertising is we advertise the base pay. Again, with P4P, they are guaranteed a dollar amount per hour that they cannot go lower in terms of clocked hours. If they work 40 hours and your base pay is $15 per hour, they cannot make less than that $600 in that week, okay? Now, anything above that is performance dollars, and that's based upon P4P. But that $600 or that base pay is protected. And that is what we advertise in terms of the base pay we give. We say, hey, look, this is what you're making per hour, plus bonuses, because you make a percentage of all the revenue you make for the business. And in case you don't know, that's what P4P is. You essentially, if you could wrap it all up in one sentence, P4P is you make a percentage of the labor revenue that you earn for the business every single day. That's how you explain it to employees. And that usually makes a lot of sense to them up front. Even if they don't understand the numbers and the math and how it all works, they haven't worked with you for a long time, they conceptually understand, especially if they are a high performer, especially if they worked at places before where they've had to pick everyone's slack. They're very motivated during an interview when you tell them they're going to make a cut of everything they bring to the business. Like, you can tell just when you say that whether or not you should hire a person. Because if you say that and their eyes light up, and they've been in the past disillusioned by the fact that they get out and work their butts off while 2 people sit in the truck, make the same amount per hour as them, and are on their phones and take a nap, that person's their eyes are gonna light up. They're gonna enjoy the fact that P4P is happening. If someone's like, oh, well, that doesn't really make sense. You mean I don't get money if I don't have a bad day? Like, what if the weather's bad? That person in an interview, you just know they're not going to perform well on P4P. And they're probably not someone you want on your team. But from a legal standpoint, you have to make sure that you honor minimum wage for that base pay, and you have to give time and a half, 1.5 times that base pay on overtime. All right. So you have to make sure you do that. And if you cut into that at any given point using P4P, you are against the law in just about every single state. You cannot do that. And trying to do 1099s in this labor industry, 99% of people using 1099s are doing it illegally in this industry. Right? If you're telling them to show up and you're telling them to clock in and they're wearing your uniform and you're using your trucks and your equipment, they're not 1099s, they're W2s. But this is still legal using the fact that you are still doing minimum wage, and anything above base pay is considered a bonus. It is subjective to the system of P4P that they sign off on when they come for employment. So it's part of our employment package. They sign off on our 2-page document, which is available for everyone here for free, p4psoftware.com, and they sign off on that. They understand it, and they're good to go. They understand the fact that performance dollars are bonuses. And they are not entitled to their performance dollars. Those things are on the table when it comes to quality lapses, what we call yellow slips. People making mistakes out in the field because they're going so fast. That's going to be a yellow slip. So that is the balance to going fast and trying to make as much money as possible during the day as an employee is if you have a callback, if you have a yellow slip, if a customer complains, if you go back to a property, guess what? There's no more revenue being generated. Therefore, you are going to not make as much money on P4P. All right. In terms of accounting, same thing. Most accounting softwares, Gusto, QuickBooks, etc., you're going to have an hourly rate, which is going to be your base pay. You're going to multiply by how many hours they worked in that week. And then anything that they earn on P4P above that amount is going to be what's called performance dollars, and it's going to be a bonus on their paycheck. So every single week, they just see a dollar amount for base pay, dollar per hour, how many hours they worked. And then if they made above that on P4P, they'll see a bonus. And that's the part when it becomes $300, $400, $500, $600, $700 per pay period that they're making in performance dollar bonuses. Trust me, they start to understand what P4P means, and they start to calculate it, and they start to understand that having yellow slips, damage cases is going to negatively impact their bottom line every 2 weeks on their pay period. How to convert your business from hourly to P4P. This is the game. This is why like literally we have less than 100 members at p4psoftware.com. And thousands of people have heard me talk about this. And thousands of people have seen what it's done in other people's business. And thousands of people want to implement P4P. And the reason they won't is because the conversion process is not easy. This is not something I can run ads against. P4P software, as much as I know it will help people's businesses. People are like, I've talked to other like SaaS companies because obviously we're burning through a lot of money and trying to create this product because I believe in it. But a lot of people are like, well, you just run ads. Like it's such a great product. It's helping all your members. Like you just run ads and run testimonials. It's not something you just like flip a switch, turn on the software, and then you're going to change your business. It changes your entire business. It changes the way that you estimate. It changes the way you're interacting with your employees. It changes everything. And so switching to P4P is not easy. It's not for everybody. And I am absolutely aware that you will lose employees and people will leave when you institute P4P. You have to do it correctly. At p4psoftware.com/training, I walk you through these 3 steps. Number 1, you've got to run the numbers in the background. That's why I believe every single person here, even if you're going to switch to P4P in next spring, you should be on P4P software running the numbers, understanding how it works, running calculations in the background so you understand how everything works, because you need to understand it. And you're going to run those numbers in the background, seeing kind of where everyone's at, not telling your employees. You're just going to run the numbers in the background using the software. Second step is you're going to talk to your employees and actually show them what P4P is. We have a 2-page document inside of the software that you can literally walk through your employees and show them the entire thing. And it makes a lot of sense. It's 2 pages. Anyone can understand it. Literally just the front page is all you need. The back page is kind of the fine print about yellow slips and things like that. The third stage, because after stage 2, you explain it to them. You say, hey guys, this is what P4P is. We're going to try this for the next 2 pay periods. And in these 2 pay periods, you cannot make less than P4P or hourly wage. So right now, the only problem, the only friction you're going to have if you're trying to switch to P4P is if your current employees make more than the base pay that you're guaranteeing inside of the system. If you do that, if you're going to have to do that, that's when you might lose some employees. Because if you're paying people $25, $26 per hour and your base is now going to be 17, 18, there's going to be some friction because their guaranteed pay is now being cut. But guess what? What we found is that most of the employees who left that were getting paid a lot more, they didn't actually earn that much money on P4P. They had just been making more money because they had been there for a longer time. They were older, they had more experience or whatever, but they didn't actually bring business results and profits to the bottom line. And so, that's conversion. First step, Run the numbers in the background. Step 2, introduce it to your employees, run it for 2 pay periods and tell them they cannot make less than what they're currently making on hourly or P4P. And then every single person, you're going to sit down in front of them after each paycheck of those 2 pay periods and say, what do you want? P4P? Here's what you made. Or do you want hourly? And if you have run your numbers correctly and made sure that your pricing is dialed in, they will make more on P4P and be like, oh yeah, of course I want $300 extra on this paycheck. Boss, thanks a lot. You do that a couple times, all of a sudden you will convince your entire team that they should have P4P. And then the third step is voting. And I truly believe you should have your team vote on whether or not P4P should be implemented. If you've done step 1 and step 2 correctly, everyone should be voting yes. You'll have 1 or 2 people vote no, and they'll probably leave organically within the first few weeks of P4P. Happens every single time. And usually those are the people that have been around for a long time. They've been paid a bunch of money. And all of a sudden when they leave, you get all sorts of stories about how they would sit in the truck and watch people work, how they would tell people what to do and then go be on their cell phone for 2 hours. You'll suddenly get these stories. And you thought all along they were your best employees. They're the ones that you could not live without. They were your trainers. They're the ones that were making your company great. And it's not true. They're the ones that you were putting on salary, giving them extra benefits, extra cash on the side, increasing their base pay. And actually, they were their least performing employees, dragging down the morale of all the high performers and causing those high performers to want to leave, because the most demotivating thing for an A player is to have to work with B and C and D players all day long. And sometimes those are the people that have been around your business for the longest amount of time, and you're paying the highest currently on hourly. So that's the 3-step process to switch over to P4P. Why I did not switch to P4P before I did. So I still remember the very day when I told my team, man, I just wish there's a way we could pay employees based upon how hard they worked and how much money they made for the business. The first reason I did not do this is fear of losing staff, because I knew that there were people getting paid more simply because they had asked for a raise. And because at the time of them asking for a raise, I needed workers and I could not afford to let them go. So I just paid them more, not because they earned it, not because they were better employed, not because they were more efficient, not because they were more profitable, but simply because I needed them and I could not afford to lose them. So I paid them more. And a lot of times, the reason people get paid more on an hourly basis is because the owner needed the work really bad, because a couple people left and okay, we'll just raise the base pay for this person, we'll hire them. You know what, I got a vacation next week and we're way behind. I'm going to hire more people. I'm just going to raise their base pay. I'm going to raise their hourly rate. It is so not tied to their performance and how hard they work. Second thing, fear of bad culture. I truly believed, and one of the fears that I had of implementing P4P was that if I did so, everyone would be at each other's throats. Everyone would want other people to lose. They'd be competitive and like wanting other people to have a lower dollar amount than them. And that people would be trying to go really, really fast and the quality of the work would diminish. All those things were wrong. And all of those excuses are absolute shadows of an insecurity, because ultimately we are lazy as business owners. It is extremely easy to convince someone to work for you by simply raising their hourly rate, by simply telling them $1 per hour rate, because that's what they're comparing you against everyone else. So it's very easy and lazy for us to do dollars per hour. Why? Because like, hey, just clock in at the end of the week. I'll pay you based upon how many hours you work. How many hours someone works has absolutely no correlation to the profitability, effectiveness, or efficiency of the labor hours that were actually performed. Absolutely no correlation. And so the fact of the matter is, it's easy to do that though. Clock your hours. I'll multiply by how much I pay you per hour, and I'll give you a paycheck. That's simple. It's easy. It's seamless. And the goal with P4P software is to try to make it easier to do P4P, because I understand that the time to calculate, number 3, the time to calculate is a big barrier as to why people will not switch to P4P. Because it's like, man, I got to calculate how much revenue they earn every day, and then I've got to take away yellow slips like deductions, and then I've got to, like, if they do damage cases. And this is truly why I did not institute P4P. I'm like, well, ultimately, if it takes us 30 minutes to figure out per employee how much P4P they earned, why in the world would I do that if I have 10 employees? That'd be 5 hours. It'd be a full-time job just calculating. And you're right, it would be. And so this is why we had to do P4P software, to make it faster. And our goal is under 1 minute per employee per day to calculate their P4P. And for most employees, it's like 13, 14, 15 seconds we're at now. At the beginning, it's going to be a minute. It's going to be a minute for you to calculate per employee per day, and take you a minute to calculate P4P using the software. All right. And so this is why I did not switch to P4P originally. I said, look, ultimately, if I cannot do this fast, if I cannot make it like quick enough to run these numbers, And it's going to take me all day for someone to like look at how much they earn and then take this deduction and then give them a percentage and break the money between projects. If there's 4 people in the job, we could not handle it. We could not afford to do that if the time to calculate was going to be too high. Fourth reason why I did not switch to P4P was because it was, it just was not easy to explain and understand. And I just really, really wrestled with the fact of like, how do I explain this to an employee when they're in an interview process? How do I explain this to an employee when they have questions and they are literally saying that I'm cheating them out of their paycheck? I need to understand this. I need to understand the concepts and be able to explain it simply and easily to an applicant as well as to an employee that is literally telling me that I didn't pay them enough on their last paycheck. And I need to be able to have the guidelines. It needs to be simple to understand. 2 pages is what we have it down to. And that explains every single thing of P4P. That 2-page document has explained every single part of P4P. There's never been a time when it's like, oh, this is outside of P4P. And people will always come up with excuses and solutions and like, oh, it's different in my business. Inside P4Psoftware.com, we have had pressure washing companies, fencing companies, decking companies, roofing companies, cleaning companies, janitorial companies, landscapers, lawn care professionals, builders, a vast variety of contractors. And guess what? P4P works for all of them, but there will always be an excuse as to why you will not switch to P4P. After this webinar, the 150, 200 people that are watching this, there'll be excuses. There will be people that will have excuses as to why it will not work for them. And I just see time and time again, this is not true. And time again, people say, "What? No, hourly is the only thing that people look at in my industry." Salary is just was expected in my area. All the laborers just expect salary. And time again, people will come with excuses. The same way I did with these 4 things, and I should have done P4P years prior to when I made the switch. All right, and all of these things are false. Every single one of them have been false in the long run. Short-term pain, long-term benefit of P4P. There's going to be a couple months of pain. When you're going through those 3 steps of transition, it's not easy. You're going to lose some of your employees. Some people are not going to think that you're doing things right. Some people are going to think that you're cheating the employees, all the rest of it. But it's the right thing for them. It's the right thing for the business. And it's the right thing for you as the owner. And trust me, the high performers will like the fact that you're not breathing down their neck, that you're not tracking their trucks, you're not recording them in their vehicles, that you're not maniacally showing up on their job sites and checking what they're doing. People don't like that. They don't like to be micromanaged. Let the system govern their behavior and let them go perform. So there's a 30-day free trial. Just go P4Psoftware.com. For today, you don't have to have the code to get in. So if you've been waiting for that, feel free to join. There's the book. The book also has a bunch more information. P4P. Just search P4P Mike Andes on Amazon. I'm going to get a bunch of questions here in just a second, so feel free to start popping those in. But this is some of the screenshots from inside of P4P. This one's actually from an actual location in the Midwest of their employees. And so it shows your efficiency score, which is basically your budget hours divided by your clocked hours. It shows your effective hourly rate on a monthly basis, month to date, which is going to be your total labor revenue divided by your clocked hours. Clocked hours is actually, they do clock in. So P4P, the app, the employee still clocks in and out. This kind of serves like a time clock, honestly, too. All of your employees clock in and clock out on the app. That creates a time card, and then you run P4P based upon that time card. It also has this team scoreboard where it's going to rank your employees, and they see this. They see, and you can determine what they see, but it ranks them based upon efficiency. Again, kind of getting that camaraderie and that push and that cultural pool towards becoming more efficient. Because guess what? If you're doing dollars per hour right now, what they are actually doing out in the field, I can guarantee you, is they know who pulls their weight. They know who slacks off. They know who stops more at gas stations. They know who milks the clock the most. They know the minute that they switch to overtime. They know the second it happens. And so truly believe that having this type of culture, this thing that I was literally fearing, and that was cultural like issues inside of my business because of P4P, changes to where literally at our last offsite meeting, we had a very open discussion about P4P, what their thoughts are when they first joined. Did they think it was a scam? When did they understand it wasn't a scam? And like the amount of buy-in you'll get from your employees when you do this, and they start to see that the cultural drift of the company is towards performance and working harder, that will attract great people. Every single day, your employees are going to get an emailed report similar to this. If they're on a one-day route, it's going to look like this. If it's a project, it's going to look on the right-hand side here, showing where they're at in terms of status of that job, keeping them on track throughout the day. Again, trying to get the the report as close to the performance as possible. They don't have to wait to the end of the pay period. They don't have to wait for a quarterly bonus. They don't have to wait for an annual bonus based upon how well the company does, or if we don't do any damages, we'll have this pot of money and we'll split at the end of the year. Employees are not incentivized by that. They're not going to run across the parking lot for a bonus that's coming in 11 months. It's not happening. Getting this report every single day in their inbox for the day prior's worth of work is what motivates them. And they start to see over time, oh, like yesterday, I really kicked butt. Here's why. I got out of the shop faster. I didn't take a bunch of breaks. And they start to see the progression. And it's extremely important to get that daily report. This is what's going to be emailed to you as a manager to be able to see, giving your score to your team. And we call it Mo Team, but it's for any one-day route. And it's going to give them a score. It's going to literally score your employees so that regardless of whether or not you are there, like these employees, this day specifically, I'm not there. I had no idea what jobs are. I don't know these customers. I don't know what's going on in these projects. But as someone who's not even on site, as a manager who is absentee, I can manage my business, know what my high performers are making, what my low performers are making, who potentially over time needs help based upon these daily metrics that are sent to me. And this is kind of why we're here today and why I'm trying to push people to join the software, because we do need money to keep developing it. It's something we're still losing money on. And the reason I'm here today is to convince enough people to join P4P so we can continue to develop these features. Some of the things that we're working on right now is trends and graphs. So instead of just seeing the daily reports or month-to-date metrics and how they're performing, they're actually going to see over time graphically how they're performing, the employees and managers, to be able to see over the course of a year, like, hey, look, when an employee comes to you, like, man, how can I make more money? Let's look at your P4P graph and be able to see that over the course of time, they went from an average of $15 per hour to now making $22 per hour, and see which months they did better in, and see who they worked with that made them more efficient, what kind of jobs they were most efficient at. These trends and graphs, this data-driven HR, number 2 here, is something we're really going to be trying to work on in 2022, and that is telling you who should work with who based upon their efficiency. Hey, this person, they've been really inefficient the past 2 weeks. Let's put them with so-and-so who's been really, really efficient on these specific types of jobs, and let's see how they perform together. So we're going to take all of this data that's coming in and be able to give you really good ideas in terms of who should work with who, and then work for you on the back end and tell employees what you wish you could say, but you don't because you don't want to hurt their feelings. Like, hey, last couple of weeks, you haven't been performing as high. Is there something wrong? Maybe talk with the manager. Maybe talk with so-and-so who's been doing the same type of work and has been crushing it on P4P. Maybe if you can get a tip or two from them. Give them tips as they're learning and they've just got it started in P4P on encouraging them that, hey, you had a really bad day today. It's probably going to bring your P4P down. Here's the things you could have done to improve. This is what to think about. Here's the logic. Be able to say all the things that you want to say to them, we'll be able to do on the back end with this data-driven HR. Looking at number of overtime hours, and then be able to see your budget hours that are on the schedule and be able to tell you when you're going to need to hire somebody. Not, oh my word, next week we're busy, but 3-4 weeks in advance, like, hey, your overtime hours are getting this certain point. Number of budget hours on the schedule has been increasing at X% per week. And assuming the same rate continues, in 3 weeks, you're going to need 2 more employees. This is the type of information we're trying to work for. And the third thing that if you read the P4P book, you know I'm very passionate about, and that's open book management and profit sharing, which is the culmination of creating a great culture, in my opinion. P4P being the base, open book management, profit sharing creates the pyramid of what I believe is a great and strong culture. And you need all 3, in my opinion, to really make a great team. And so this is going to be something that we integrate down the road as we get into QuickBooks integrations and things in 2023, to be able to share with the employees in a very simple sense what profit sharing is looking like. Where the business is at from a very simplistic standpoint, not a spreadsheet, not a P&L, but a very simplistic standpoint for them to be able to know, hey, how's my quarterly bonus looking for profit sharing? Oh my goodness, it just dropped. What happened? Oh, we had payroll yesterday and $50,000 came out. That's why my profit sharing kind of looked like it dropped. And then be able to see live over the course of a quarter what happens to profit sharing. What happens to every single part of the business when it comes to open book management. These are the things I believe in. These are the things that why P4P software exists. And this is why I encourage you to join. Selfishly, without any sort of remorse, I need people to join so we can continue to fund the development of these features. There's no shame in me saying that. We don't have any private equity. I don't have any investors. I'm doing this all of my own pocket. And this is why we've had to make it public and outside of Augusta, because we could just simply not afford to continue spending $40,000 and $50,000 a month developing the software. And that's what it costs, because Developers are extremely hard to come by. They're extremely being pulled the directions of the Facebooks and the Amazons and the Apples of the world, where they can make hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's expensive, but I truly believe this is the right thing for me to be doing right now and spending my own personal money on this. And so that's what we're doing. So please, please, please join p4psoftware.com. It's free 30 days. And then Brad is a CPA. He works for me. He's worked in the field and worked with me while we were implementing P4P. So all the things I talked about, people asking for raises, and he saw all the shakedown of the implementation process. And we didn't have a guide to follow. We were making it up on the fly. The voting, he was there for that. He was there for all of that in the field, by the way. And he's a CPA, certified public accountant, and he can help you implement P4P. You can talk to him for free. Just sign up for a free trial, and then go on the right-hand side, go to the resource center, and book a call with him. I'll talk to you for 30 minutes on Zoom, go through the software with you. If you have any questions, if you're like, if right now you're thinking through this whole presentation, like, no, there's a reason I can't join P4P, and this is why, just book a call with Brad, please. Let him show you inside the software how you could manipulate it to make it work. What we're working on now is trying to make it as customizable as possible in terms of like hourly rates, adjustable additional rates, percentages, all the rest of the things to make it as customizable as possible. I can guarantee you, if you just think creatively, you can make it work 100%. And so please join. I'd really appreciate the support. I know there's some people in there that have literally said they are literally just doing the $99 a month and supporting it, and next year they're joining. I really appreciate that. We need that right now to be able to afford the constant development that we're pouring into it. But ultimately, I believe it's going to change your business. And so even if over the next couple months, you're in here just running numbers on the back end, not talking about P4P with your employees, do it, because you're going to understand how P4P starts to work and what the reports look like and who on your team is the most efficient. It's incredible when people start running the numbers, they start realizing who actually makes the business money instead of just who performs well when you're around. That's what usually happens in a small business. So I hope that presentation was helpful. I'm going to jump into questions now, and hopefully I can get as many of these as possible answered. Let's see here. Going through here. Have a P4P structure already set up for our tree crews. Thankfully, the crews are loving it. Absolutely. Landscape only. Anyone have any landscape clients that they visit only once monthly, year-round? This is what we're shooting for here. Anyone who's successful had any advice? Ultimately, if you have like monthly contracts or they have level billing, remember that level billing, the problem with that is even though the billing is level, the amount of work being done is not level, right? You're going to have periods of time when there's more work to be done. So the whole goal is to be able to pay the employee accurately based upon budget hours for every single visit, right? So it's not super difficult though. For example, say, okay, let's just say we're doing a maintenance contract for a commercial building. We need mowing, bush trimming, and leaf cleanup, okay? So what we're going to do when we do that estimate, we're going to figure out how many budget hours we got to put on this estimate. We're going to figure out, okay, let's just say there's 3 budget hours per mowing visit multiplied by 30 visits in the year. Okay, 90 hours, great. Then we're going to have bush trimming. We're going to do it 5 times a year. It's going to take us 10 hours per time. Okay, leaf cleanup. We're going to do it 6 times. It's going to take us 3 hours per time. You're going to add up all of those hours, multiply it by your hourly rate, divide that number by 12, and there's your monthly level billing amount. But then what you're going to do is you're going to go schedule that mowing service for those 30 visits. And they're all going to have that number of budget hours allocated to that service. Same thing goes for the leaf cleanup. Same thing goes for the bush trimming. So that way, when the crew shows up, they don't see this big contract with a dollar amount at the end. What they see is mowing 5 hours. Okay, next week they come, do mowing again. Next week they do mowing again. Next week they show up, there's mowing and bush trimming. And the bush trimming is an additional 10 hours for them. This is how you have accuracy on your estimates, and then you pay your employees accurately on P4P. Having contracts and level billing is no excuse to not have P4P. It works just fine. And the way that you build the estimate is the same way that you then set up the contract, and it's absolutely possible. All right, let's see here. I keep trying to think of how this is applying to manufacturing business. Ultimately, you're looking at output, right? So there's been a couple companies already do this on manufacturing, especially when it came to food manufacturing, and they are paying employees based upon whatever service or task they want them to do. And it's just a numbers game. It's like, okay, if you do X, you get X amount of dollars per X amount of output, right? So ultimately, we sell budgeted hours. We sell hours, units of time to our customer. That's what we're selling. And so what we're trying to do is sell sell it for them for at $70, $80 per hour, and then pay our employees a percentage of that. And so when it comes to any sort of variable in terms of labor, if the employee works harder, they can get more done in that hour, and therefore they should be paid more, right? So as long as you can make a unit economic out of whatever is being produced from the labor, you can make P4P work. I once worked at a stone making place and you got extra cash if you made 100 plus stones. Yeah. Also had a buddy that worked at a pallet place and he got paid per pallet made per day. Exactly. And then you have to have a backup system for quality, right? You can't just pay someone based upon unit production. You got to then have a system by which quality is enforced. And that's what the yellow slip system does and the damage case system inside P4P does. Do you pay every person the same base hourly rate and percentage of revenue, or do the team leaders, drivers, and people doing billing get higher hourly and more of the percentage of the revenue, or same all around? We do the same all around. I'm a big advocate of doing the same base pay for everybody on the team. Now, the only reason you would change this is if there are employees that are doing things that do not create revenue and they need to be compensated for this. All right. So this would be something like if they're doing billing, for example, or you're having them do shop tasks, that needs to be paid outside of P4P. So for example, we have someone at our local shop, really good at mechanics. They spend maybe 5-6 hours a week, 7 hours a week, be kind of like the shop mechanic. They get paid $1 per hour base rate that's higher than our base pay when they're doing those things. And that's manual time being added. But everything else, when they're out in the field working, they are on P4P. The same base pay as everyone else. That's the most fair, okay? And ultimately, this might mean that you need to simplify services somewhat, but more importantly, even if you're doing excavation and all the rest of it, if you're doing a more complicated service, your dollars per hour on that budgeted hour is going to be higher. If I do mowing, for example, and I charge $50 per hour for mowing, and I give, let's just say 40% of labor revenue to my employees. If I give 40% of labor revenue to my employees, and then I charge $150 per hour because they're doing excavation, guess what? That employee is going to make more money. So I'm a big fan of having the same base pay and the same percentage going to the employees across the board. I am in my companies, we've never changed that because if someone's so good, if they're so experienced, it should show up in their performance. They should be able to make more money. They should be more efficient, and they should be able to do those services that are at a higher hourly rate. We do have project management bonuses for things like drivers. If you have people who are designated drivers, you could give them a project management bonus, or you could just give them a trainer bonus. So a trainer bonus for us, they get $1 per hour basis increase to their P4P. So if they work 8 hours, we give them a $4 per hour bonus in addition to their P4P. So that'd be $32 extra on top of their P4P because they were a trainer. And you could do that if you had things like designated drivers or other scenarios like that. This is a weight lift from the shoulders. Free up people for sales and expansion. Separate the shaft from the wheat. I only make $4K a month from solo. Yeah, so you do not need P4P at this point. You only need a P4P after you have one employee. However, I would recommend that if your intention is to grow your business, is to start running P4P and understanding it so that when you hire people, you start paying them. Even if you're paying hourly, pay them what your base pay is going to be next year and the year after when you do scale. Because you'll have no friction, you'll have no issue switching your employees to P4P if their base pay on P4P is at what they currently are making on hourly. Because then there's only upside potential for them. They already have guaranteed what their current hourly rate is using base pay. You're only going to get kickback when someone's hourly rate is currently higher than what your base pay is going to be on P4P. Do you get complaints from clients that the crews are mowing too fast? Occasionally, yes. We do get that occasionally. But ultimately, a customer is paying for a result. They're paying for their lawn to be mowed. They are paying for a wall to be installed. The speed at which we do that should not really come into question unless the quality suffers. And that's when yellow slips and damage cases come into play to balance everything out. Okay? Do employees still ask for a raise on P4P? Here's a fun fact. Since instituting P4P, we have not raised our base pay. I have not one single time been asked for a raise from a frontline staff member. Not one single time. Not a single time. Maybe one day I will be asked, and my response would be very simple. Here's the numbers from last week. your coworker made $10 more per hour than you should probably figure out what they're doing. You should probably talk to them, ask them if you can't shadow them, ask them if you can't learn some tips from them. Watch how they're working. Watch how quickly they get out of the shop in the morning. Watch how quickly they are able to change out their blades, or able to change out the weed whacker line, or they start thinking about creative ways of carrying where they position the truck when they show up to a job. Think about that. Maybe watch some YouTube videos and be more efficient in your job, because there's someone obviously making $10 more per hour. So be more efficient. And that's what I would say. But guess what? Not one single time, not a single time has a field frontline employee ever asked me for a raise since instituting P4P. And it's been years. And prior, I probably had 5 to 6 people ask me for a raise the 3 months prior to instituting P4P. And we all know how awkward some of those conversations are when you know the employee, you can't afford the raise, the employee doesn't deserve the raise, and yet you need the worker because you got jobs on the schedule and you're overbooked and it's raining and you got to get the work done. It's a lot of pressure. How do you reconcile the two software systems? They do not integrate. We don't have any integrations right now. The only thing that you're going to save in any sort of integration right now is the fact that the budget hours would be converted over. Because right now, if they're clocking in and out of P4P, it already creates a time card. The only thing you have to insert in is the number of budget hours created. Now, if you do not, or so the number of budget hours completed in a day. The only thing is, if you do not use budget hours currently, again, that is not an excuse. We have made the ability for you to be able to use the simple P4P option inside the software, where you simply put how much labor revenue was earned on the day. Okay. So if you don't use budget hours, or it's hard to calculate inside your CRM or anything like that, still not an excuse. And I don't expect us to be able to ever integrate with Service Audit, Justin, just because they're closed off in terms of integrations. I've been considering Service Audit. Are you saying you wouldn't recommend it? I'm just starting up, so I'm not in it too deep. I would not recommend using Service Audit if you're just getting started. I can't wait to implement P4P in our business. Let's go. How would it work if a 2-man crew where one is making more percent than the other, and on a job, the higher paid makes his P4P bonus, but the other doesn't even make base pay? So this would be where I would say, although the software allows you to pay someone a different percentage, I would not recommend that. It's not fair, in my opinion. Use project management bonuses, which is inside the system, to be able to dictate if someone deserves more money. All right. So for us, if a job is over a certain number of budget hours, that's when it constitutes as project management bonus, because someone needs to be able to be the leader on the job. And then they get $1 per hour of the budgeted hours. Let's just say it's a 100 budget hour job. We're going to give them, let's just say $200 or $2 per budgeted hour. Doesn't matter how many other people are on the job site. Maybe they got done in 2 days because there's a bunch of people on the job. Doesn't matter. There's going to be $200 of project management bonus money on the table for that project. And if you're talking about recurring work, where it's something would apply here, where you have a more experienced person, they would be a trainer. Okay. I would stick with that model, and you keep your base pay and your percentages the same. I know we can change it. It's inside the software. You can change people's base pay on an individual basis. You can change the percentage of revenue that they make as well individually. But I do not recommend doing that from a cultural standpoint. Let's see here. Alarm and camera installer. Let's go. What about solo operator? Again, I do not believe that you need P4P when you have 1 and potentially even 2 employees, because again, the only thing that P4P solves is unmanaged labor. When you as a solo operator have 1 employee or even 2 employees, you are the system. You are the person, because you have eyes on them all day long. But as soon as that link is broken, that's when unmanaged labor becomes the suck of money. And this is why I always talk about people get 3, 4, 5 employees, because that 3rd, 4th, and 5th employee that you cannot manage throughout the day becomes very, very wasteful if you do not have P4P instituted. And therefore, that you just make no more money in profit at 5 employees compared to 1 or 2. How ready is it to implement? I just rewatch the video here, Striving Ben. How do you handle scheduling with budget hours? We use Jobber. I know you use Service Audit, and I'm wondering how to quickly understand total budget hours per crew by looking at our schedule. So this is not so hard to figure out, all right? So if you have something that does not have budgeted hours easily calculated, first and foremost, I'd be looking at trying to use what's called a custom field in most CRMs to be able to use budgeted hours. But if you cannot create a custom field by which you can create a report and easily find these numbers out, just realize that you can get your budget hours simply by taking the amount of labor revenue and dividing it by your hourly rate. Let's just assume that you're charging, I don't know, $50 per hour for mowing. And at the end of the day, you take the crew and they made $1,500 for that day. You can simply take $1,500, divide that by $50 per hour that you're trying to make per budget hour. That means 30 budget hours were completed. All right. But regardless, you can still use P4P software because go to the settings and switch it to simple P4P. And all you'll need to insert each day is the amount of labor revenue generated, the amount of labor revenue performed. Okay. Now that part, the reason that we have the advanced P4P is for like when you have level billing and contracts, you might not be giving a percentage of the amount of money they made in the month to the employee because one month they don't work there very much, another month they work there way more. So that's when budget hours becomes really important, is when you have like supplies or material costs baked into that. You can't just calculate that 1,500 if not all of that was labor revenue, because the employee does not get a percentage of the revenue. They only get a percentage of the labor revenue. Okay. So if they get a yellow slip, do they just go back and fix the job on base pay? They go back and fix the job and there's no more money being generated on P4P. Remember, at the end of the pay period, we're going to look at hourly plus overtime versus P4P. And that's been calculated every single day. And we're just going to take the higher of those two. So what that means is when someone's clocked in, they are making money on base pay. They are not making any P4P dollars, though, if they're going back and fixing a yellow slip. So this is what happens. Okay, we got over here, we got hourly plus overtime. Over here, we got P4P. Every single day, we're adding these up, right? Throughout the pay period. When going really efficient, P4P is higher, great. And then all of a sudden you get a yellow slip. What happens here is your hourly rate and your hourly base is going up, how much you've earned in this pay period, but your P4P is not. All right. So at the end of the pay period, still I'm going to take the higher of these two. And if you're really inefficient, guess what? This is going to become higher. Your hourly plus base. So when you go back to fix a yellow slip, you theoretically are not making any more money if you're on P4P. If you're being really efficient and you get hit by a yellow slip, you're not making any money going back and fixing that. But you are protected over the course of the whole pay period that you're going to make at least your base pay. If employees using P4P finish their quoted jobs faster, do they just go home? Do you manage this by allowing employees to choose how much work they have per day? More lawns, more for harder workers. Yeah, so you're going to get to know the ebb and flow of which employees need more work to stay satisfied. Your highest performers are going to want more jobs. But ultimately, we don't like to move the schedule around and create havoc in the business if someone gets a job done way sooner. Like we've had jobs that are 100 hours and people get them done in 20 or 30. And you're like, oh my word, we got to like call the customers and bring other jobs forward and try to sell in tomorrow's schedule. Like a lot of times it's like, look, if it's going to be a hassle and we don't have the time in the office, it's just like, look, take the next day off. You worked it. You worked hard. You earned it. And most of the time they're not complaining. They know the fact that they just did a week's worth of work in 1 or 2 days. They are not complaining about having the next few days off. You're going to have really money motivated people that you potentially might put them on some shop work or put them on another job that was with the lower performer. But it's just a bit of a waltz and a bit of a dance when you get someone that just crushes budget hours. But you'll find as time goes on, you're going to get more and more accurate on determining your budget hours on estimates, and it will happen less likely. And you'll be able to schedule way out into the future, giving people exact dates of service on your schedule because of budget hours being more and more accurate. Tyler with A1 Landscapes Construction Maintenance. So for my maintenance services, I offer $130 monthly for weekly services and $180 per month for biweekly service. What's your thought on that? Yep. So I would recommend. So let's just say, oh man, I wish I had my camera working up here that I could show. Can I do that? No, I can't because it's not plugged in. I wish I could show you though on a whiteboard or something, the math behind this. But let's say, for example, you're charging a customer $130 per month. Let's assume that you have a let's do $180 per month. They're doing biweekly services. Okay. We're going to assume you're doing every 2 weeks. And let's assume that your hourly rate is going to be 70, 60. Trying to get a round number for everyone. Let's do 60. No, 70. Let's do $90 per hour is your hourly rate because you're just such a stud, right? So we're going to take $180 per month. We're going to divide that by 90, means 2 budget hours per month is what you have allocated on this estimate. 2 times 12 is 24 budget hours. Okay, so we have 24 budget hours now to allocate to these jobs. Now you say, well, I'm going to have 24 visits for mowing, whatever it might be. Okay, great. That means you have an hour per visit, a budgeted hour per visit. And that means that there's $90 worth of revenue being produced per job, per time they go and visit. So when the crew member shows up, they're going to make, let's just say 1/3 of that, they're making $30. Okay. So when you have level billing, remember that the amount of work being done is not correlative with level billing. So if you're going to run P4P, you need to pay people based upon the work being done in that month, the work being done on that job. So you're going to have to allocate budget hours. If you're doing level billing, you got to allocate budget hours to every single job. So that way it's accurate in terms of work being produced versus what they're being paid. Otherwise, what you're going to have is you're going to have in the middle of the summer when grass is growing like crazy, it's taking them 2 hours to mow the lawn. And then somehow in the middle of winter, it takes them 10 minutes just to blow everything off because nothing's growing, and they're going to get paid the same amount. That's not fair. You'll get a mutiny in the winter or in the summer, and people will love your guts in the winter. So you can't have that. You got to have labor being correlated with their pay. Can you explain more about how shop mechanic earns more while they are doing that type of work in conjunction with the field work? Yeah, so instead of having a shop mechanic, we have one of our employees that is really mechanically inclined, and he's worth more when he's doing mechanic work, and he can make more if he went someplace else. And so we can't pay him base pay, right? So any other shop work, cleaning the trucks, everything else besides this one employee gets paid base pay. And the reason we do this is because we don't want people to be working, doing things around the shop and spending 2 hours on a task that could be done in 20 minutes. Like when I see companies clean their trucks out, I literally look at it. I'm like, that 20-minute task could be done in 4 minutes. But the reason it's not is because everyone's getting paid on an hourly basis and they enjoy spraying water on a truck. It's easy. And so ultimately, anyone that's doing shop work or stuff around the office or cleaning up or doing some stuff around like organizing, they're getting paid at base pay. It's gonna be a manual addition inside of p4psoftware.com. So you're gonna take your base pay, let's say you're paying $15 per hour base. They do an hour's worth of organization or shop work, changing the blades, whatever it might be, changing out the oil, whatever. That is going to go $15 onto their P4P as a manual adjustment, making sure that they get paid for non-billable time, because on P4P, you're only getting the percentage of billable hours, billable amount of work being produced. So when they come back to the shop and work for an hour, you got to give them money in terms of P4P to manually adjust that. But when it comes to our shop mechanic, that manual addition is calculated at a higher rate. I think we do $25 per hour because it's mechanical work that he's probably saving us from going and spending 40, 50% more if we took it to a shop. So that's why we do that. Honestly, solo pay yourself P4P with the bonus. Yeah, this is a great thought. This is what a lot of our solo operators do when they're first getting started, is pay yourself your salary. Everyone's like, what should I pay myself? Pay yourself P4P. Get in the habit of running P4P, running your time cards, clocking in, understanding the numbers, being able to see the graphs, understanding them. So when you have employees, it makes sense. But then in the meantime, that's what you pay yourself, is what you make on P4P. I'm in the field with one employee. See how far behind I am. Whoa, I'm way behind. Mercy. I'm in the field with one employee. Should I split the percentage with them, or do I pay myself separately with the percentage? Same question if I'm out in the field. Yeah, so it's very difficult when you start mixing field work with office work. So if you're in the truck working with someone else, it's easy to run P4P, split it, whole 9 yards, right? I don't think you need it if you're solo with them and that you're always working with them, because you are the system that's managing the labor. You don't really need P4P, honestly. But if you are doing phone calls, estimates, emails, other admin work throughout the day while you're in the truck, and then they'll hop out and get started earlier, it's tough to rectify with them the fact that you're not producing revenue all day long, and that's hard. So I would say in that case, what I would try to do is work from, say, 7 to 3 out in the field with your employees, so you can run P4P with them and just cut the revenue in half like usual, and then go do your estimates, then go do your phone calls, etc. Or potentially take an hour in the middle of the day, give them extra money for that, for the P4P side of things. Like they would earn all the P4P on a specific job instead of cutting that part of the revenue with you. Just joined, but what percent do you recommend paying each employee on a 2-man crew? So watch the training videos, p4psoftware.com/training, and I give you the metrics in terms of what percent I believe you should give, as well as what your base pay should be. And most of that is actually calculated based upon what your hourly rate needs to be to attract employees. Your base pay, the amount of money that you give them as a guaranteed per hour of work, is tied to what you're going to charge on an hourly basis. Okay, so I always have said that you want the amount that you pay on base pay to be 25% or less than how much you are charging the customer on an hourly basis. So if I'm charging the customer $80 per hour for a service, I want my base pay to be less than 25% of that, which is going to be $20 per hour. If you do that, it usually means you're going to have a good enough delta difference between base pay and P4P to make it meaningful for your employees. Okay. Because if I'm at 25% or less, but I'm giving my employees 33% or 35% or 40% of revenue, there's a really nice delta of P4P bonus that they're going to be working for every single pay period. P4P falls apart and is absolutely worthless if your employees are all hitting base pay every single time. There's no motivation for them to work harder. All right. We have 3 crews, and I've been considering starting my project crew on P4P. The budget hours will be easy to figure out. Just do it. I promise you, it's going to be hard in the short term. You're going to resent it. You're going to have some questions from a crew member. They're going to make you feel bad, like you're trying to cheat them. But I promise you, it works. I promise you, in 1 year, if you do this, you will thank me. You will absolutely, it'll change your business. Your employees will love you a lot more because the highest performers will make a lot more money. And more importantly than making more money, you won't have to breathe down their neck, which they resent you for right now. And furthermore, they're going to love you because it will weed out all the low performers. The people that are just dinking around all day long, they're going to hit base pay all the time and they're going to leave. And guess what? You're not going to hear about this in 3 and 4 months of the people who are lazy. You're going to hear about the day 1 or day 2 because now people's pay is tied to each other. They're dependent on each other working hard because their labor revenue is split equally between crew members. You're going to hear about the low performers on their first week of work instead of after 3 months. And all of a sudden, all of these stories come out about how they did all sorts of crazy stuff. This is golf. Oh, gold. Let's go. Budgeted hours. Budgeted hours is simply how many hours you believe the job is going to take. Multiplied by your hourly rate is going to come up with the price. So basically, there's a long advertisement for the software. You can consider it like that. I believe the software is going to help change your business. So you can call it advertising, you can call it persuasion, you can call it whatever you want, but I believe it'll change your business. How do you manually calculate P4P? Great question. So if you wanted to manually calculate P4P using a spreadsheet or paper, if you watch all the training, you can actually do it, to be perfectly honest. The software is really built to make it as efficient, and the reporting to be able to get the reports to your employees and see track over time and the features that we're rolling out in terms of really helping them based upon that data. But if you want to do it manually, it's like this. Determine how much revenue, how much labor revenue an employee made every single day, divide that by whatever percentage you're going to give them, and that's what their wages are for the day. Okay. So here, let's just do it real quick. It's really simple. All right. Ultimately, let's just assume, right? Sorry that this camera's not working. Otherwise, I would do this over my shoulder. Okay. Let's assume 10 clocked hours. Beautiful. Okay. We're going to pay this person $15 per hour as our base pay, meaning that they made $150 on an hourly basis. But then let's assume that they also earned the business $600. $600 is what their labor revenue was for the day. Okay, and you just can calculate this based upon whatever software you're using. $600 was the labor revenue, and I'm going to give 1/3 of that in my P4P to my employees, which means he's going to make $200. This employee is going to make $200 on P4P. Okay, so 10 clocked hours, they're guaranteed that 150. And then down here, I'm going to give a percentage of the revenue they make for the business. The more they make on labor revenue, the more P4P they will make. He just made an extra $50, i.e., he made $5 more per hour because of the system. This is why employees like it. Because they're high performers and they kick butt, they make literally $5, $6, $7, $10 more per hour using this system. That's how you manually calculate it. All right, let's see here. Questions. So should owners punch their hours or pay as a manager? Owners are either I would recommend if you're solo, like paying yourself on P4P is not a bad idea. And then down the road, as you start doing more overhead tasks like estimates, hiring, sales, things like that, you're going to have to start paying yourself some sort of salary or distributions. Mike, I am losing my hair because of stress. Any advice? I have a big patch missing now. Let's go. I'm probably gonna get the same place one day. I have thin hair, and I'll probably eventually have to go bald. So, all right, everyone. I really appreciate you all hopping on here. I really do. I do recommend go to ppsoftware.com. Try it out for 30 days. You can cancel. It's not a big deal. But I truly believe that the businesses that do this will be in the best position as we head into a harder and harder labor market. It's not getting any better. All the jobs are going towards massive companies that have huge amounts of money. The data is absolutely evident when you look at the jobs report. Everyone's going to brag about how many jobs are added. What they're not going to show you is what percentage of those went to massive companies and which percentage of them went to small businesses and service-based businesses like ours. It's going to be harder and harder to convince people to work out in the sun, the elements, out in the cold, out in the rain. And in order to do that, in order to attract high performers, you're going to have P4P. I just believe that to my core. I don't care if you just say, oh, I just pay people salary and I just pay them a lot of money. You will not be able to run that profitably. You will not be able to scale that in the long run, and you will not be able to pay people enough on salary in order to justify them working on the elements. You will have to institute P4P. I do believe dollars per hour is antiquated. I believe that most owners do it because they are lazy and they have a lot of excuses as to why they're not switching to P4P. And the reason I know that is because I did the same thing. And I was wrong about every single one of the things I mentioned today in terms of what P4P would do for my business. It was nothing but positive. I cannot imagine running a business without P4P today. Every single one of my businesses today, including the gym, including Command Center, every single one runs on P4P. So for anyone that says their industry is different or doesn't work or whatever, sorry, you're wrong. So I really appreciate all of you. I appreciate all of you supporting me and P4P software. Like I said, we don't have investors. We don't have outside capital. Tomorrow, you're going to see why I don't have outside capital, because we had a phone call being recorded by a venture capitalist calling into the Command Center and being an absolute jerk. So stay tuned for that video tomorrow. But that's a big reason why we don't have venture capital in P4P software or in Augusta or anything like that, because I'm very focused on what we're trying to do with this industry, what we're trying to do for home improvement, small businesses, and P4P is an extension of that. And I do need your support. We're going to still be losing money for the next year on this, and I'm not. It's not coming out of Augusta's pocket; it's coming out of my pocket. And so I'm trying to make this as best as I can for our franchisees. And so, in extension of that, because we cannot afford to be able to do it, lose hundreds of thousands of dollars, I have to reach out to all of you and ask for your support. And I truly believe in doing so. It'll make your business much, much better. So thank you all for your support. Have a fantastic rest of your weekend. And thanks for sticking around for the past hour. Take care. I hope it was helpful. And if it was, share it with another landscaper, share it with another home improvement, small business owner. I truly believe this will change people's businesses. It did it for me, and I hope it will do the same thing for you. Make sure you join the Facebook group as well. There's a separate Facebook group just for people on P4P. And so you can see that link directly from the website as well. Check out p4psoftware.com/training. All that training is completely free. Watch the videos, goes really deep, shows inside the software. We've added a lot since we even made those videos. So thank you so much. I really appreciate all of you. Have a great rest of your day.